former state police officers who worked with him on his ranch. He would have made, in words of Spencer, a pretty good hermit, yet he was so good-natured that he utterly lacked the resentments and paranoia of presidents such as Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and Donald Trump. Reagan had strong convictions and could be quick on his feet as a speaker, but he lacked intellectual depth or curiosity. His mind was full of finely honed stories and factual nuggets, many of them apocryphal, some of them based on movies he had seen or acted in, others invented by right-wing propagandists. No matter how many times his claims were revealed to be false, he stubbornly kept repeating them. He often bored aides and visitors by reciting the same well-worn tales over and over, instead of engaging in the intricacies of policy arguments. When he was working in Hollywood, he drove many associates to distraction with his incessant talk about politics. When he was in Sacramento and Washington, he drove many associates to distraction with his incessant talk about show business. Yet he was seen as more successful in implementing his agenda than such presidents as Richard Nixon, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, all of whom would presumably have scored higher on an IQ test. His memoirs were ghostwritten, as were most of his presidential speeches, yet he could be an extremely effective writer in his own right, producing words that were meant to be spoken rather than read. He could be famously stubborn, yet he was usually willing to compromise and settle for 70% of what he wanted to get a deal done. He had a near photographic memory, honed by memorizing movie scripts, yet claimed to not recall crucial details of decisions that proved scandalous, whether a deal he made with the Music Corporation of America, MCA, as president of the Screen Actors Guild, or his administration's initiative to sell arms to Iran and funnel the proceeds to the Contras. Sometimes he could make tough decisions when he felt they were necessary, firing thousands of striking air traffic controllers in 1981, invading Grenada in 1983, bombing Libya in 1986, walking out of the Reykjavik summit later that year rather than trading away missile defense. Yet often, as in the aftermath of the 1983 Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, he was paralyzed by indecision. He was a distant and disengaged chief executive who found it impossible to fire aides, and he was terrible at managing his staff, allowing disagreements and jealousies to fester out of control. He was a sucker for a hard luck story and would regularly send a check to ordinary Americans who wrote to tell him of their woes. Yet he propounded economic policies that inflicted real hardship on millions of ordinary people while providing a windfall for the wealthy and exacerbating income inequality. A longtime supporter of Israel and opponent of anti-Semitism, he upset Jewish groups with his determination to visit a German war cemetery at Bitburg in 1985, even after it was found to contain the graves of Waffenschutzstaffel, SS soldiers. Similarly, although he prided himself on his lack of bigotry, he angered African Americans and the LGBTQ community with his apparent indifference to racial discrimination and the ravages of AIDS, respectively. He also prided himself on being an outdoorsman, yet he aggravated green groups with callous comments about trees causing air pollution, and with his appointment of the egregious James Watt to run the Department of the Interior. He professed to be deeply religious and fervently believed in biblical prophecies, such as Armageddon, hence his aversion to nuclear weapons. Yet as president, he seldom went to church, preferring to read the Sunday comics, and never began cabinet meetings with an invocation. He often expressed his skepticism of the government, but federal spending soared by nearly 70% during his presidency, and state spending by 120% during his governorship of California. Even his famous quip, "I have always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help,' was uttered during a press conference in which he announced an increase in federal subsidies to farmers. He ran for president as a pro-life candidate who equated abortion with murder. Yet as governor of California, he did more to legalize abortion than any previous person in U.S. history. He backed the death penalty, but as governor appointed a chief justice who wrote a state Supreme Court decision holding capital punishment to be unconstitutional. And although he supported gun rights, he made California's gun laws the